Hello to all dear friends of Inside Opera and Classical Music, and welcome to a new video. King Henry VIII of England was a musician and composer. Didn't you know? Then this video is dedicated to you. But first, I remind you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done. What are you waiting for? It's a small gesture that costs you nothing but is essential for the growth of the channel. King Henry VIII of England is remembered today primarily for the schism with the Church of Rome and the founding of the Protestant Anglican Church, and is also famous for having many wives, including the beautiful Anne Boleyn. But the king, among his various hobbies, also devoted himself to music and left us several of his compositions. The education of a king foresaw the knowledge of the art of war, of languages. In fact, he spoke, in addition to English, also French, Latin, a little Italian, and later a little Spanish and Greek. But he also received an education that included dance, literature, and the ability to write poetry, and also music, song, and composition. The king was also passionate of cartography, architecture, science, mathematics, and theology. He was certainly one of the most educated kings England had ever had until then. Henry VIII was a great patron of the arts, and he appreciated the music of all kinds, from the sacred song to the love songs, up to the lute drinking songs. He also played many instruments, such as the cornet, regal, flute, virginals, lute, and the harp, and many of these also he knew the process of construction. He also knew how to sing. It is said he had an acute voice, and that he was able to read music at first sight. And this was not a common ability for a nobleman who was not a professional musician. Henry VIII also delighted in composing simple and catchy pieces of style, mainly intended as court compositions, inspired by banquets and palace parties. It was for this reason that they had a remarkable success, not only in the court, but also spread quickly among the English people, sung in fairs and taverns. The people often sang them, thus passing them on the various generations, and this has led to the existence of countless versions and arrangements of these pieces, even contemporary arrangements. Henry VIII came to the throne at a very young age, only 18, and during the early years of his reign he brought what we might call a breath of freshness to the English court. With dances, feasts, a little exuberance in addition to the usual hunting pastimes, falconry, archery, and horseback riding. It dates back to this very first period of reign in 1509, one of his best-known compositions, and its Pastime with Good Company, also known as the King's Ballad. And it is a popular song with a strong Renaissance taste, which was probably written in honor of his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. This piece, however, was not intended for private use, but rather to be repurposed to his court, and it was in that court that it came into use until it became a very popular song, so much so that it is said that it was one of the favorite songs of Elizabeth I, the daughter of Henry VIII and the Boleyn, who later became Queen of England. This famous song speaks of all the amusement of the court, a moment of leisure in good company. I personally find significant just the first sentences of this piece. Pastime with good company, I love and shall until I die. Grudge who lust but none deny, so God be pleased thus live will I. These first sentences perfectly reflect the personality of the king, a king who loves the pleasures of the court and good company. But how can we distinguish the original versions of his pieces from those handed down and arranged later. Dating back to the earliest writings, it dates back to two manuscripts: the manuscript of the Baldwin collection of motetti and the manuscript of Henry VIII. This manuscript of Henry VIII, dated 1522-1523, contains a collection of 30 pieces, of which 14 were written by the king, composed between 1510 and 1515. Many of these manuscripts are signed by the king's hand, and the others have been copied by at least 5 other copyists. Both manuscripts are kept at the British Library in London. Among these pieces, in addition to songs and ballads, there are also 2 masses, a motet in 3 parts of 1530, Quam pulchra es, and a hymn. They are both vocal and instrumental compositions. The king enjoyed the reputation of being a good composer and musician, although I wonder if anyone could ever argue the opposite. And this musical production of his certainly influenced the history of music itself, as more and more pieces were composed to suit the tastes of the court and the king, and then they went to follow the style of the pieces written by Henry VIII. An example of this is the new use in this period of polyphony in secular music. Therefore, the use of polyphony, the use of multiple voice in non-religious music, a practice that we could define as a sort of precursor of the madrigal. However, to understand the ability of Henry VIII to compose, historians agree that the famous King's Ballad was composed by Henry VIII, as the vocal parts have small errors of writing. These are small mistakes that a professional musician of the age would never have made. So, Henry VIII was what we might call an excellent amateur musician. These pieces, and in particular Pastime with Good Company, are still performed today, and not only by Renaissance music ensembles, but have also been revised in much more modern versions. We find, in fact, the Ballad of the King in folk rock version of Blackmore's Night, and as King Henry's Madrigal by the rock band Jethro Tull, and in the symphonic metal version by the Austrian group Serenity. If you are already dreaming of being able to view the King's manuscripts in the British Library, I must say that unfortunately this is not possible. In fact, these manuscripts are housed in the British Library, but they are located in the King's Library section, a glass structure that rises in the main hall, but accessible only to library staff and scholars who request it for specific research. And to conclude, I found an ironic anecdote about Henry VIII as a musician. Thomas More was Lord High Chancellor of England under Henry VIII's reign. During a reception, it seems that Thomas More praised the king as a composer, saying that his music was heavenly. The king, who had been waiting for that compliment for a long time, thanked him, mainly because he was an art connoisseur. But it seems that Thomas More then reiterated, "Sire, I have abominable tastes in music." I think that this anecdote, in my opinion not true, comes from the film of 1966, where actually Thomas More claims to have bad taste of music, but Henry VIII replies saying that they are excellent because they coincide exactly with these tastes. And, on the other hand, the king's tastes had to be the court's tastes. And you knew this anecdote? Do you know any sources other than mine? If so, write it down in the comments. Maybe we can understand together if this dialogue is really documented. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked, leave a like and a comment. And if you haven't already, remember to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss the next ones.